Hello and welcome to episode 273 of Super Switch Headz, the premier Nintendo podcast on all of the internet. My name is Patrick Knisley.
My name is Jordan Willis.
My name is David Howe. And boy, oh boy, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest returning to the podcast. Oh, he's one of our favorites. Give it up for the wonderful Michael Domangue, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much for that warm welcome.
Of course.
And Michael, you are joining us to talk about Emio, the Smiling Man Famicom Detective Club. Nintendo did it. They made a new Famicom Detective Club game, and we've all played at least a few hours of it, and we're going to talk about it. But we are also going to be talking about a lot of news items, including PAX West happened. There's new Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom trailer showing off even more stuff. We're starting to hear about Mario Party Jamboree. There's a sale. There's other news. We're going to talk about all that stuff. But before we get into any of the news and main topic, let's do a check-in. How's everybody doing this week?
I'm great. This weekend I helped Patrick over at San Japan 2024, San Japan 15. And, last minute he asked me to come down, help out and set up the booth and help run the booth and everything like that. And we had a great time. Ironically enough, that is I don't know if it's true irony, but it is the first time we ever met in person. Was not in the town that we both live in. So I don't know how that works out, but
Wait,
yeah.
This was the first time you guys have met in person?
Yeah, that's why we were talking about scheduling that hangout with you, David.
That's insane. I don't know why I never realized that.
But then we don't need to do the hangout. No,
yeah,
we still do.
Yeah,
but,
just meet in person again for the second time, like 5 years from now. We'll just play it like that.
San Japan 20. We'll meet there in 5 years. It was cool though. I never really been to a lot of like conventions like that. So I will say I get the vibe. I get the hype. It was very fun. I would love to go more to something like PAX that's more gaming focused. This one is pretty heavily anime focused, but they did have a good amount of video game stuff too. And they had a pretty large arcade setup that was free play, which was really nice as well. So, but yeah, overall, I think my favorite part was like the artist alley was really sick. There's a lot of really, really cool art. One I wanted to shout out was this dude named Lanny Ho, who was doing lino prints. So he was carving out of wood and then putting the paint on there, the ink on there, and then slapping it on paper. And they just all look so sick. And they were in like a traditional lino cut style. That was really, really cool. So, but that's about what I've been up to. And then just recovering. Like yesterday, I kind of just took it easy. Yeah.
Yeah. How was your experience at San Japan, Patrick, showing off your game?
I guess I should go because just to follow that up. Yeah. I mean, I have, that's what I did. I prepared for it and then I traveled and did it and traveled back, and I am wiped because it's just a lot of like waking up at 6 or 7 so I could do setup or shuffle a car from a garage to another garage, or like for whatever stupid reason I would have to get up and do shit like that and then stay up till midnight. Except the last night I crashed at like 10. But anyway, yeah, it was a lot of fun. I feel a lot more comfortable having shown my game at a handful of events now that like, I don't know how to explain it. I was telling my wife this last night. Like, I just don't really care anymore. Like I do and I don't, you know what I mean? Which I think it's in a good way, right? Like, people come by and they like it, awesome. And if they play it for 1 second and they're like, it's not for me, too slippery, I'm like, all right, cool. You know what I mean? Like, whereas it used to like affect me more, I think. That's
good.
Yeah,
that's good.
But also I think where it can be exhausting it's not a thing like this is it's 3 full days. And so like by the end of the third day, I'm just like, I don't give a shit what you have to say about my game. Like, you know what I mean? Like I've talked to enough people about this. I can't pitch it if you don't like it. You know what I mean? I can't convince you. Like I'm over it. But yeah, I don't know. That sounds all negative. I had a really good time. And like the point being like, there wasn't really any huge criticisms of it anyway, but just like, I think I've just kind of like not as stressed about it as I have been in the past in a good way.
I will say you did have one victory. There was a person who had played your game last year and said it was too slippery, came back and said that it's a lot more polished this year around.
Yes.
Which that's a win, dude. Like that feels,
like since I played your game last time, I played a bunch of slippery games, and now I like slippery.
That individual is very supportive, and I
Yeah.
have talked to them, and we'll talk to them again outside of like that convention. It was kind of funny. I was expecting them to show up, and they did, and so yeah.
Very nice. Well, that sounds like a ton of fun. Sorry I wasn't able to make it out. I was just kind of fucking on my back for like a lot of this weekend. I was just like not doing much at all. It was kind of chill. But yeah, it's been all right. I've been rewatching Andor recently. I fucking love that show so goddamn much. And I just get really fired up every time I think about it. Makes me want to write a manifesto and learn how to make explosives, But anyway, that's what I've been. Are we on a list now? I don't know.
We were already there.
Yeah. But other than that, yeah, just playing some games, hanging out, and doing normal things. What about you, Dodo? How was your past week?
My past week was busy. I was actually in y'all's neck of the woods. I was in Texas this past week. I'm back in the movie theater industry after a long layoff and went to a conference called Cine Show, which is all theater owners from the South and Midwest. So had a chance to meet with my coworkers. I'm in a fully remote company, so this was my first chance meeting all these guys in person, which was real fun. Happy to say that all of them lived up to my expectations. But the cool thing that we managed to do is like a team bonding is we went to the Texas Theater in Dallas, Texas.
Oh, yeah.
And got to see the Flash Gordon with Sam Jones, Mr. Flash Gordon in attendance. And it was, I won't say it's a life-changing moment, but it was definitely like a top film watching moment for me. So it was really special to do that with the team.
I got to play the Flash Gordon pinball machine at San Japan. We were on the same wavelength.
We keep overlapping.
Yeah.
Full symmetry.
Well, last week we did an episode about the Indie World and Nintendo Direct Partner Showcase that happened, and we don't often shout out the person who's guesting, but I have you on this list. I think before we asked you as a guest, Michael Domangue shot us a note that said, "All right, Switch Headz, it's time to be like a dragon." Are you a big Yakuza like a dragon person?
Like one of the prior episodes that I was on, I was raving about Yakuza 3. During lockdown, I played, at the time, every Yakuza game in existence, like back to back while it was locked down. And I love the franchise. I love all the characters. Pocket Circuit Racer is like one of my favorite NPCs, maybe in gaming history. It's just a franchise that I love. And I love the fact that it's now coming to the Switch, where like that game in particular, I think is really suited well to a portable.
Nice. Over on Instagram, we got a comment from Spralix asking, what about Star Wars Outlaws, David? Are you interested in that one?
I am interested in that game. I'm not going to pay $70 for it, though. I think I will grab it at $20 when it goes on the Steam sale.
Is it $70?
Star Wars Outlaws? I imagine so.
Okay, I'm getting Outlaws and Hunters mixed up in my head. Okay.
No, I don't give a fuck about Star Wars Hunters.
Yeah, I don't either, and that's I had them mixed up. I'm more interested in this one. Okay.
Yeah, looks good.
That makes sense, what you just said now. Okay, and then over on our Discord, we had a lot of people talking about various things, so just some quick rattle-off shout-outs here to Cool Uncle Vince, Hans Gauger, Swampy Southpaw, Steve Irwin, Medium Quality, who was talking about the previous episode, actually, Carusetta, New Metal Zaddy, and Emma, who I think caught our shout out to Emma in that last episode. So if you too are listening to this and want to be shouted out next time, make sure you comment on the YouTube channel, subscribe while you're there, because I think we just hit a number, but let's go up to the next number, right?
Yeah, dude, we just hit, I'm going to take this time to say it. We just hit 500 subs on YouTube, which is quite a grind for 5 years, finally getting up to 500 subs. It's about 100 subs a year, baby. Although that's not actually how that growth works. But that is a huge milestone for us. I want to give a thank you to everybody who's subscribed to us over on YouTube and got us to this big number. I can't wait. Hopefully it takes a lot less than 5 years to get up to 1,000. And from there, the growth keeps going. But it's only because of people like you who listen to the show, support us, like and subscribe, tell your friends about the show and all that kind of stuff. The best growth you can get is through word of mouth, especially for a YouTube channel like ours, where almost everything we do is long format, feature film length podcast episodes, right? So anything you guys can do to get the word out is super helpful. And I just want to thank all of you once again for subscribing over there so you can look at our beautiful faces as we talk in your ear holes.
Also, we want to mention our Patreon. We have a Patreon where you can financially support the podcast. So thank you to all our patrons on Patreon. And if you want to learn more about that, you can head over there and check that out. All right, with that, we are going to talk about the video game news and rumors for the week. We're going to start off with PAX West. PAX West, an annual event, just happened this past weekend, right? And I don't know if there's any major announcements that came out of this one. Are there? And I just missed them? Or I know there was like a Gearbox presentation or something like that. But
yeah, there was some stuff here and there. It wasn't a huge announcement laden event, but Nintendo was there and had a presence. And I know they showed off 2 playable demos for the 2 kind of most upcoming games that they have on their slate. So people got hands-on impressions of both Mario Party Jamboree and of Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. And so we're getting a lot more kind of thoughts on how both of those games play. And it was just nice to see them at an event, since they didn't do Gamescom. There's obviously no E3 anymore for them to participate in, but, PAX West is right up there in Seattle, right in their neck of the woods. So they kind of tend to make a show there whenever they are there. I definitely had a little bit of FOMO, like looking at people out there this weekend. I think I'd like to apply for some credentials next week and see if we can make it out there, because that seems like a ton of fun. And I really like Seattle in general as well.
Speaking of that new Zelda game, Nintendo has dropped more info on this, right? Including an additional trailer showing off the still world is what they're calling it, right?
So this basically, the last trailer before this left off with someone entering sort of a dark area. And then this is a trailer where we figure out what that is. So it's kind of like a second world. I couldn't quite get, maybe I can get y'all's opinions. I couldn't quite feel it out. So it kind of reminded me of like the Minish Cap, where you go into a separate area and then you have like a couple things, but it's not a huge interconnected world like the main hub. This seemed more like you go in, there's like a small area, and then that's where the dungeons are. It's kind of the vibe I got from the trailer. But I mean, I don't need to see any more from this game to know that I'm going to play it and probably love it. I think the other big takeaway was you could use a sword, but it seemed to be like a mechanic that's not an item that's equipable. It's more of like a decreasing meter that you can only use for a certain amount of time.
Totally. Yeah. It seems Zelda fans who just want a Master Sword that doesn't degrade continue to not eat well, because this is now basically, it's like you can play with a sword, but you have like a meter that charges and you can only use it for a certain amount of time. So you have to like be strategic on when you actually use the sword, because they're trying to get you to use all these echoes and different kind of creative ways to fight enemies and figure stuff out. Right. The name of this game really seems to be figure out the best way for you to solve any particular issue, right? Which I think is really cool. I'm super pumped, like hearing the impressions from this game from PAX, seeing this trailer. You're right. I mean, I didn't really want to watch this trailer, but I did because we host a Nintendo podcast. So I want to stay informed. But it's like, it looks great. And yeah, like you said, it doesn't really seem like a whole alternate dark world like Link to the Past. It seems more like places that you delve into for like little chunks, which I think is actually a really good way to do it. And man, it just got me so excited. I'm frothing at the mouth to play this game later this month.
What about you, Dodo? Are you excited for this one?
I mean, this is easily my most anticipated Nintendo game for this year. Like, I don't think there's anything else. Sorry, I haven't played Mario and Luigi games growing up, so that one I'll check out. But like, this to me is everything that I love sort of about modern Zeldas with that 2D coat of paint. Like, it hits several levels for me, both as a new Zelda fan and a childhood Zelda fan. So like, I'm excited for it. I'll be checking it out. I have not seen the most recent trailer because I'm in a position where I'm a guest on a podcast, so I don't need to escape up. But I want to be as little spoiled as possible for this game. Like, I just want to go in blind and experience it.
Well, another Nintendo game that is coming out a little later this year is Mario Party Jamboree. And we got a little bit of info about that, as I guess the marketing for that is going to start to ramp up, right? They gave us a new character trailer. Surprise, it's Pauline. Pauline's going to be in the game. And I assume that's Pauline's first time in a Mario Party game.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know Summer has got to be doing somersaults right now out of excitement. It's nice to see Pauline in more games than just the handful she's been in.
For Summer, they're just called salts, but
that's what they're called. That they're Summer's salts. You understand?
This is cool. I am just wondering, like, is Pauline going to get her own game before Waluigi gets his own game? That's the first thing I thought when I saw this trailer. I was like, they're pushing Pauline pretty hard these past couple of years, but I don't know. I could see it happening.
Waluigi, Pauline, and Birdo all need their own games.
Yes.
Maybe they could all just be packaged together in some sort of Pokemon-esque triple release. That's what I'm looking for.
It makes me wonder this more specifically about this game. Are there other characters that they're going to do this with? Do you think when there's one character trailer, that makes me think they might want to drip feed another character or two? And
I think there's at least one more slot that we know needs to be filled that they haven't shown us. And there'll probably be others as well. So I would expect to see one more character trailer.
And who would that be if it's a character like this that's not been in a Mario Party game? Is there another character y'all can think of?
Mach Rider.
Mach Rider.
I was going to say the Dr. Mario 3 Goombas stacked on top of each other with the lab coat.
Oh, Dr. Goomba Tower?
Dr. Goomba Tower.
Absolutely.
Oh, I do think Dolphin would be cool. The Dolphin from Super Mario World. That would be pretty great.
Okay. Well, we'll find out if it's either of those.
What if it's Karen from the rooftop party?
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh boy. Well, moving along, there is currently a sale on the eShop. So it's called the Blockbuster sale, and it's ending on September 9th. So you have a little bit of time after this episode comes out to check it out. It's a lot of third-party games. So like a lot of like some Minecraft games, not Minecraft itself, but the Legends and stuff like that. Blasphemous 2, the TMNT game. Pentament's on there. I don't know. A bunch of things like Darkest Dungeon. I don't know. Anything y'all noted in this sale that you want to point out?
Yeah, there's some cool stuff. I mean, Prince of Persia Lost Crown is now $30, which is a pretty good price for that game with a ton of content and a lot of replayability. Cool Uncle Vince in the Discord actually pointed out a few things that I wanted to shout out on here. The Bit Trip collection, which is like 6 Bit Trip games, is $2.50. That is a must own if you have never played those, especially at $2.50. That's like, they're basically giving it away at that point. 13 Sentinels is $15 right now. I know that's like an enormous RPG with tons of content. Lego City Undercover is $6, which is meant to be the best Lego game. So I actually almost bought that myself, but didn't quite because I figured maybe actually you already owned it, Patrick.
I do. You can play it.
You do? Yeah. I'll play your copy. And then Civilization 6 is $3 as well on the eShop right now. So Civ fans, you got something to check out there. But there's a lot more. That's just what Vince told us in the Discord.
Nice.
Yeah. Let me just hijack this moment to say, if you have not played 13 Sentinels, just do it now for $15. That's an impulse buy. One of my favorite games of 2020. Just absolute must play, especially, and it runs great on the Switch. So check it out there.
There you go. We'll move along to some news about an Emio deck machine has been announced. So this is sort of like, what is this thing? Like a way to play emulated games as well as your Steam games is what it's being marketed as. Yeah.
It's basically a mini PC right here. I think the main kind of takeaway here, and feel free to jump in, Dodo, if you have something, but it's being made by the team behind Emio Deck, which is like an emulation kind of platform sort of thing started for the Steam Deck, and it's kind of turned into a bigger kind of crowdsourced emulation front end of sorts for handheld PCs, right? And so they basically make it to where, depending on whatever kind of device you have, if you set up Emio Deck, it'll pre-configure all your emulators and stuff to run as best as they can for whatever product. You know, now they're actually kind of making their own little mini PC. And I think what's notable here is that it is running on Linux and it is running on, what is it called? The Bazite, I believe, is a kind of front end that basically is built for SteamOS, right? So they're kind of revitalizing the Steam machines. Some of you might remember Valve tried to do that for a while, make these little set-top boxes that would go in front of your TV for living room play. Seems like Emio Deck is kind of taking that into their own hands right now. And I think the really cute thing about this is that it looks like a little Dreamcast. And I love the look of the Dreamcast. And so I just wanted to make sure we got this in so you could take a look at that little cute Dreamcast that they're going to be selling. But yeah.
I'm interested in this. I'm always a little interested in when people who are doing software make the leap into hardware, because they are two different beasts. So like the specs for me will be the most interesting part. But I will say that Emio Deck is like just the most easy to learn, easiest way to get into emulation today. And I think it's been an absolute just triumph on the Steam Deck. So happy to see it spreading out to other platforms.
Absolutely. It does seem a little not worth it if you already own a Steam Deck, because you can get a Steam Deck for cheaper than what this is. And it looks like it's about as powerful, and you could just dock your Steam Deck, you know. But I mean, it's nice to see SteamOS shipping with more devices. I think it's one of the best things that Valve has done with SteamOS is made it open source. Anybody can use it. And that's just fantastic. And so I love to see this going forward. And it's just such a wonderful platform for emulation in particular. And it's nice to see big companies just support that kind of thing, right?
We're going to move on to talking a little bit about Metal Gear. Apparently, a producer over at Konami, Okamura, has made some comments. And I think this isn't the first time that this has happened, but teasing that Metal Gear Solid 4, which is a, hard to play, find game, right, will be in the second Metal Gear Solid collection, right?
Yeah, man. I mean, it's just a big deal because Metal Gear Solid 4 currently is locked to the PS3. My understanding is the architecture of the PS3 is really hard to emulate. So this game has never gotten a re-release. If it does get a re-release in the Volume 2, that would be a really big deal. I think the other thing about it is that he didn't exactly say it, but he said something along. Unfortunately, we can't really say too much at the moment with Volume 1 containing MGS 1 through 3, ... You can probably connect the dots. So he's like all but. He's being a little cheeky about it, but he's like, I can't legally say that it's coming. But I mean, what comes after 3? 5.
yeah. Well, what comes after 2? Valve does not know. But sorry, just throwing some shade on the previous news story. But I am a Metal Gear Solid 4 enjoyer. I think it's one of my favorite games, honestly, in the series. I know a lot of people, it's like universally known as like the worst game in the series, but I actually really like it a lot. So this is good news. Like just hearing that they're even talking about it at all makes me excited. And just what that means for like potentially porting more PS3 games going forward to other platforms. It was a hard architecture to develop for. So I think maybe that just means they're making a bespoke port of the game from ground up. I mean, there's a lot in that game that is very much like, look at your PS3 disc, or it's like, like they're like talking about like the stuff that only the PS3 can do. So I'm curious how they're going to do that. There was like a tweet a while ago from David Hayter, who plays Old Snake, talking about, he was with a statue of Old Snake being like, I had a meeting the other day. And it's like, okay, well, that's exciting. So maybe they're recording new stuff for the game for some sort of re-release, but either way, I'm pumped and I hope that does come out soon.
We're going to move on to a little bit of news about the director of Devil May Cry and Dragon's Dogma has made an announcement that they are going to be leaving Capcom. I don't know much about this. Is there anybody here that can speak a little bit more to what's going on with this story?
Yeah, so he's been at Capcom for, according to his tweet, 30 years and 5 months. Very precise, love it. But he announced that day on August 31st that he's leaving. And as of September, he will no longer work there. So he literally gave everyone that notice and then was immediately gone. But he's just been part of Capcom for so long. It's been the director on, I think, most of the Devil May Cry games, if not all of them. And then both of the Dragon's Dogmas. So he's, pretty ingrained in Capcom. But he says he's not retiring. He is going to be starting development on a new game in a new environment. So I'm just kind of curious to see what that means, because my understanding is like Dragon's Dogma was like pretty successful as far as what that was going for. And all the Devil May Cry games were pretty successful. So I don't know exactly what would entice him to leave Capcom as a company. It seems like he was there for a long time. He had a pretty good job with a lot of creative input. So
what if he's taking over at Tango Gameworks now that Shinji Mikami left? Trading one Capcom X for another.
Ooh, yeah. I don't know. I don't know what he's going to come up with, but curious to see if he's going to be a smaller project or I don't know. Maybe true. It'd be silly.
I don't think we said his name for what it's worth. So Hideaki Itsuno?
Hideaki Itsuno.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, there you go. That's who we're talking about. I don't if we did say his name, I apologize, but I just want to make sure we mention it before we move on to a little bit of news about Stardew Valley, the game that continues to receive updates and will until the death of its creator, apparently. Because Concerned Ape made a lot of money off of this game, so much that I don't think he ever has to do anything else if he doesn't want to. And apparently this is what he wants to do. Jordan, or do you have a little bit more context for this new update that's coming, or this patch rather?
Yeah, so they released a 1.6 patch, which is pretty beefy on PC recently. And he's been working on the 1.6 patch for consoles. So that'd be like Switch, etc. But it's taking a lot longer than they expected. I think, getting patches approved for these consoles, the whole process, even when you're done with the work, it's all the approvals and all the hoops you have to jump through to get it pushed onto the consoles. But I think the bigger story here is that because of this console patch, he has not been able to work on the new game that was announced a while ago called The Haunted Chocolatier. Everyone's been asking, what's up with this game? Where is it at in development? And the tweet, according to the tweet, has not been able to work on it in a long time because committed to finalizing 1.6 Stardew Valley first. So, I think that just kind of says that this game is a lot further out on development than we probably would imagine, especially because it was announced maybe 2 years ago, maybe more at this point. So I think that's the bigger takeaway, is that game is probably not coming anytime soon, but it is great to hear that, I love to see the commitment to Stardew Valley players, it's just constantly pushing updates that no one is necessarily asking for, but everyone loves to have.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really, really unique situation.
Yeah.
It's interesting. To lead us into our main topic, we're going to talk about a little bit of news that has happened around Emio, the Smiling Man Famicom Detective Club. In particular, we're going to start off talking about reviews. The game is now out and has been receiving reviews. I don't know if y'all have read any specific ones you want to mention things about, but over on Metacritic, it's looking at a 76 right now and an 8.5 on the user score. So higher, interestingly. Or maybe not. That may not be surprising, right? The people that go out and review games. I don't know. That's its own thing.
I mean, I don't know that all the reviewers are going to be visual novel players, but I think a lot of the people that are going to Metacritic to write their own user reviews probably are, right? So this type of game just might not gel with everybody, but it's very cool to see that it's doing well regardless of that, right?
Absolutely. And in addition to just reviews and that sort of thing, Nintendo has been putting out its Ask the Developer interview series, which it does over on its website. I don't know if anybody here has had a chance to read or, skim any of these. They tend to stretch them out by putting them out in parts. I would imagine this is an interesting one to read about because of the history of this series and the just sheer length of time between the new ones and the remake and the new one and stuff. So have any of y'all looked at this at all in detail, or?
I read a bit of I read the first section because, yeah, you're right. It is stretched out pretty beefy, mostly talking about like what they wanted to do with the game, like so many years away from the original releases. But I always love these things too because of the footnotes. So like there said, he's influenced by Italian director Dario Argento. And I was like, oh, dude, that makes so much sense because I recently saw Really Red by Argento. And that kind of has like a mystery vibe that I think carries over. So that's why I like to read these interviews just to kind of see like where the influences come from. It's pretty cool. But yeah, I will be reading the second and third parts after this pod. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't read all of these, but I kind of watched a little bit of a video sort of about them and I skimmed them myself. And I think some interesting takeaways here is, that Sakamoto's been making these games for a long time or made them a long time ago and kind of had an idea for a new one after they had made the remake. And then it was Kaori Miyachi, who is kind of more of a production like coordinator, not really so much a creative, that really pushed Sakamoto to continue with the idea and move along. And I think Sakamoto and Miyachi like ended up having dual writing credits on this game. So it kind of feels a little bit like Sakamoto is maybe kind of grooming Miyachi to be his heir going forward, on, if not on the series, then just in general at Nintendo. And it's nice to see somebody who's been involved more on like the business end of things get more involved with the creative, especially after having been at the company for a long time, like Kaori Miyachi has been. So that's really cool. And then just some other insight into some of these interviews too, is that it really seems like the way that games are picked up for we're going to work on this game next is because the senior developers at Nintendo feel like making that game. You know what I mean? Like, it's not really explicitly said, but it doesn't seem like Nintendo like looks at a long list and is like, okay, here's what the numbers are on this game and it sells this much, so it makes this much amount of sense to put this out. It really does seem like that they give a lot of credence to a lot of these long-term developers that have been at the company for a long time. And they're like, well, what do you want to make? Right. And I think that could explain a little bit why, you know, there are series that we don't see entries in for a long time, you know, even though it would make sense for Nintendo to make new ones to keep it fresh. I think, you know, it just might not be an interest from the creators to make a game like that. So I found that to be a really interesting takeaway from these as well. And you can really see it in the game when you play it. We'll talk about that in the main topic, but you can really see the passion in the storytelling.
That's really cool because I think that's smart, right? Like, yes, let the people who are good and have been around for a long time, who we can trust, make the games they want to make, because like then they're going to be good games, right? Like don't force certain things. And it also makes me think about that Capcom story, and it's obviously purely speculation, but who knows? Maybe that person wanted to make something that Capcom didn't want them to make, or they just wanted to make a new IP or something like. And giving your creators that power sounds wise.
If you're older in Japan and you're like past the retirement age and you've been making games your whole life, the reason that you stay in the business is not to like make money, you know, like, you know, someone like, you know, Sakurai, who is like, I should have retired long ago, but I just keep getting pulled back in because I just love doing this shit. You know, Sakamoto is like really getting up there in age, but he clearly just loves to work on this kind of stuff. So at this point, you know, you kind of can do whatever you want, right? You know, whether or not your company lets you, then that's a different question. But it's like nice to see that Nintendo is supportive of those kinds of ideas.
All right. Well, I think that's going to do it then for our news and rumors section. We are going to take a short break. And when we come back, we're going to talk in much more detail about Emio, the Smiling Man, Famicom Detective Club. All right, we are back, and this week we are talking about Emio, the Smiling Man, Famicom Detective Club, Nintendo's newest release, one of their first ever developed and published M-rated games. Whole nother topic that we might get into soon. But just came out this past week, and we've all had a chance to at least play a little bit of it. And we're going to break it down. So, gentlemen, how has your experience, overall impressions of however much of this game you've been able to play so far, how are we feeling about it?
Yeah, Dodo, maybe we can start with you. About how far into the game are you, and are you enjoying it so far?
Yeah, I texted David earlier this week and I was like, I don't know if I'm far enough in the game. I'm on chapter 7. And he was like, oh yeah, you're far enough.
You're farther than the rest of us, probably.
Look, when y'all texted me, I was like, hey, are you going to play this game? I was like, all right, let me get right into it. So I wanted to make sure that I was far enough ahead. So I'm a little over halfway done with the game. I'm not someone who plays a lot of visual novels. I think 13 Sentinels is actually sort of the closest to that genre that I've really played. So I honestly can say this is the best visual novel I've ever played. And it also happens to be a really fun game. It's been really fun to sort of get back to like the adventure games of my youth in a lot of ways. That's sort of what it most relates to. So it was fun to get back into it. The story is really compelling. I am going to finish this game. Like, I'm absolutely going to go all the way through the end to find out who the Smiling Man is. And yeah, it's just been really wonderful to see like the love and care and the craftsmanship that you typically don't see with games like this. And I think that's been the really special thing to see in there.
Yeah, I'll jump off that because I played a little bit of The Missing Heir and I dropped off pretty quick, not for lack of dislike or lack of liking it, but I just played so many other games that I was like, when I tried to go back, I was like, I have no idea what's going on. But this game, you can tell they have the benefit of one, having made the remakes, and two, of just like how visual novels have evolved over time, and just like taking those lessons and making a new game is what was more compelling for me to check this one out, because it's like, okay, why did you want to revisit this idea 30 years later, And so I think that's really cool. I think that's like actually really shines in the game, and it looks incredible. The writing's been really fun to read. Yeah, I'm like enjoying my time, and if I don't finish this game, I will at the very least watch a playthrough.
Yeah, I'm enjoying this game quite a bit more than I was anticipating myself. I'm 3 chapters in, or I've finished chapter 3. I'm now on chapter 4. So basically, yeah, the length of the demo, which is a hearty demo, by the way. Like, that's like, if you're asking all the right questions and you're doing everything, that's like a 5-hour demo right there, right? And it's a good chunk of the game. And I'm like completely hooked on the story now at this point. I'm really enjoying it quite a bit. I think the like kind of urban legend stuff about the game mixed with what you learn about like real life murders that have been happening in this town. It's not overly complicated, it's like, it's not something like Seven where it's like, oh, every one of their murders is one of the 7 deadly sins. It's like, no, it's just like a guy who kills people and puts a bag over their heads, it's like pretty basic stuff. But I think because of that simplicity, it makes every single little detail that you learn really, really important. And I think the way that they're doling out clues, they're doling out stuff that you learn from the people that you interview and stuff like that. It's just at a really great pace in a way that keeps it constantly compelling and doesn't overwhelm you with information at any given point. So I'm really enjoying that. I mean, the art is fantastic. I think the voice acting is also fantastic. So I'm just having a really good time with this game overall. More than anything, it's making me want to go back and play the other 2 Famicom Detective Club games because, it's all the same team, all the same writers and everything, obviously, with about 30 years apart between the writings of these stories. But yeah, it's great stuff. I'm really enjoying it so far.
Me too. I wasn't sure. So I played through the first or the remake of the first Famicom Detective game, and I actually really enjoyed it. However, I felt like there were some things in it that were a little bit of the time that they didn't address in the remake, and I was concerned about those things in this game, and I will be honest, they are still in this game, but I think I've accepted them, and I think they flow, and I think they are slightly improved in this one than in the remake. I did not play both remakes, just one of them, so I assume the other one is very similar. I don't know, it's without like jumping ahead too much. Despite that, I actually have eased into a play style that I like with it, if that makes any sense. And maybe I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but I just want to shout out AV in our Discord, who said it very well when they said the Famicom Detective Club games are an acquired taste. I think that like this is the easiest one to play. Having played other visual novels that are more modern, quote unquote, right, than these remakes, there's just times where the progression is weird in the Famicom Detective Club games, but I think I have kind of accepted how the game wants you to play it and play it in a much more relaxed way, if that makes any sense. And I think what it is, and you kind of mentioned this, Dodo, there's like this adventure style game, right? Like you have this sort of menu of options at any given time. And without like getting into everything, it's like ask or call or use your phone or look. And sometimes it's very unclear how to progress, which thing you should do. And I think I've just got this attitude now where I'm like, it's cool if I'm here a while. You know what I mean? like, and I think that's kind of the way you have to play it. If you don't want to get frustrated. I don't know. Does anybody have any thoughts on that? Like part of it?
You just go through every menu item until you're like, I haven't done that yet. And then you go, and
sometimes you have to do the same thing twice, right? Like to actually get it to progress.
Yeah.
it's never clear. I mean, sometimes it's very clear what they want you to do next. Sometimes you hunt around. I think the most difficult puzzle in the game I've had to figure out is how to get a taxi cab. There was one segment of the game where I'm just stuck in a field and I'm like, I don't know how to get out of here. But that's where, like, when I talk about adventure game, it's the look feature in particular.
Yes.
Where sometimes in the game, they don't want you asking or talking. They just want you to find the thing that's going to lead to the next step. And that, to me, is actually sometimes the most difficult part of the game. But even then, I think a brute force strategy seemingly always gets you to the next step.
Yeah, it is a novel. The novel part of visual novel is that it's not like there's all these different branching pathways and all these different story beats. Like, it is a story that you are basically reading through with little bits of interaction here and there, right? So a game like this lives and dies by the strength of its story, obviously, right? And I think just the fact that you've got a little bit of that interaction, it makes you feel smart as you're just basically having your hand held going through a game like this. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day because that's kind of what the style of game is, right?
That moment in particular is where this game turned on for me, where I was like, there's a moment when how you get the taxi cab. I won't say exactly how, but it was like, oh, you're telling me a story in a very unique and cool way. Like, it was just a really cool way to do it. And there's like a lot of little things like that I like, just really, the writing really shines. Like, okay, so I have been really getting into the idea of role playing as characters in the games that I'm playing. And so this one doesn't have a ton of moments, but there was one moment. There's a cute police officer that you obviously have a crush on. And if you look and you select her chest, she calls you out. Mm-hmm. She says, wow. And this is not the first time I've caught you looking. And I was like, oh my God, this game is like getting in my head. You know, it's just really funny.
Wow. Way to tell on yourself there, Jordan.
I know. But I just was like, really, it has a couple moments like that. I was like, man, this game is like really well written. It's like very nice, really cool to play through.
Yeah, and beyond the first two games too, I think there's a lot more humor, like you're talking about in this game. There's a lot of like funny moments that break the tension. You know, there's some characters in this that are just silly, right? And interacting with them is really fun and funny, and I always look forward to having scenes with them just because they make me laugh, right? Yeah, I don't know. I just think it's really well done in that way.
Absolutely. Just to harp on the sort of like waiting for the taxi or then riding in the taxi, I think something this game has done well compared to the other ones, and where it makes that sort of, you're trying to figure out how to progress, feel more appropriate, is the character is literally stuck there. And I'm going through this list of things trying to figure out, well, how do I get out of here? Or I'm riding in a cab and it's kind of this sense of, it's going to take however long it takes for this cab to show up, even though it's kind of me finding the right sequence of events. And that works better than sometimes in a previous game where there's somebody in front of me and I'm like, I just don't know how to get you to say the next thing. Yeah. Which sometimes happens in this game too. But like the moments that it just works. They've kind of picked moments to focus on that fit the game style better, if that makes sense. At least
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing I really enjoyed too is like at the end of every chapter, you do like a review of what you've learned over the course of the chapter. So for me, that's really helpful to like drill it into my head. Okay, these are the clues that I learned. This is what I need to be focusing on in the next day or the next chapter that I go into.
Yeah, and what I like about that also, talk about hand-holding, is that like even when you get something wrong, it doesn't really like beat you over the head with the fact. Like maybe you get a slight little line of, well, you didn't get it quite that time. But you know, it's always that feeling of discovery and not so much punishment, even when you get something wrong.
Totally. It reminds me of like, well, you know, in Ace Attorney, it's like if you get things wrong enough times, you have to start over the like encounter or whatever. So I actually really preferred this because sometimes in Ace Attorney, I'm like, I have no idea what piece of evidence I'm supposed to pull out and what part of the evidence I'm supposed to be looking at. So this was like nice because it's like, oh, okay, it just pushes you along in the story no matter what option you pick.
Mm-hmm. Maybe we could talk a little bit about like kind of like the setting and stuff about this game. I love that when they remade the games, you know, those games were made in the 80s or whatever, or like the early 90s. And so it was set in the present day, like when those games came out. So they were kind of like period pieces, you know, but now this game was made today and it's like a direct sequel to those games. So this is a game that's like basically set in 1990, you know, which is really cool, you know, that like that this is in a world that's in the past. I don't know that Nintendo's ever really done that other than, like Murasami Castle or something like that. But it's like having a somewhat modern period piece is really fascinating. And I love that they added cell phones into this game. Like it's like really early rudimentary cell phones that the characters like barely know how to use. And it makes sense because back then it's like nobody was really using cell phones when the game came out. But now we know, now it's like a new mechanic that you can add that spices it up with the kind of betterance of hindsight of technology. And so that's something I really like about this game. I just find that really fascinating.
I know some of us here have played a little bit or a lot of the remake of one of these games. Something that is carries through, and Nintendo does this in a lot of their franchises, right? Is all the same sound effects, the same UI, and all that. And I don't know why, but playing this, that was very satisfying for me after having played the previous one. It's like, oh, it's nice to hear the same sound effects, and it's comfortable, and it made me feel at ease. And I know that might not be true for like you, Michael, playing this as your first time, but it just. I like it when that happens, and it's sort of the same action list, even if there's some new updates like the cell phones, like David was talking about. I also think this is doing better than maybe the remakes, is that when I am stuck and I am going through and redoing things, there's a lot more. I think it feels like there are a lot more little dialogues that happen. And what I'm trying to say is if I pick the same thing twice, it does. It feels like it's longer before I start getting repeats, where you're like, okay, this is a dead end. It just feels like there's more optional things, if that makes sense, so that when you are stuck, it's a little more interesting, and a little more variety is happening. I could be wrong, but it feels that way. And
no, totally. I think you're right. I'm constantly just going until I get a repeat. You know what I mean? Because it's like every time you'll get new little nuggets of information, right? And I don't want to miss anything, right? And I think also too, they do a really good job of whenever you have exhausted everything and then you go to the think option, it just gives you there's like a little bit of yellow text or something in there that's like, what if you maybe just thought about it in this way? And it's just these great little hints that just kind of ease you into the right location.
I think that's better in this one than in the remakes too. I think the little hints, which don't feel like beating you over the head, but like they happen more frequently or just are there as opposed to like, I just don't feel like I'm brute forcing like I was in the other one as much, even though I kind of am. It just feels better.
Yeah, one weird thing I find really comforting with this game, and I know this is something it doesn't have that makes me happy, is the lack of any sort of achievement system or even like a checklist of things you have to do outside of the game. Because I don't feel like I'm trying to 100% this or find all the dialogue options or fill out the notebook. I'm the detective. I'm figuring this out on my own. And whatever path I take is the path that I end up taking. So I don't feel that necessity to just like, look on every item, search for everything. Just do what I feel is best to finish the story.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, you know that you're going to get to the same end no matter what, which is kind of nice, in an era of open world games with 20 different endings or something like that, knowing that this is like not necessarily a choose your own adventure, but closer to like a set story that you're going to get to the end and it's going to be the end. And you don't have to worry about, oh, did I do every single branch pathway? Like some of the other games that are out there. Like I played Zero Escape Virtue's Last Reward, which probably has like 15 different style endings. And there's different ways to get to all those different endings. And it was kind of exhausting, but I ended up playing that game for a lot longer than I wanted to. So this is nice to know that you're just kind of like on a nice, like theme park ride is kind of how I would describe it. You're going along and you're going to get to the end no matter what. But yeah,
it does make me wonder how much replayability this game will have, and I think that's probably why people are hesitant to pick up stuff like this. I think, I'm curious if like a $50 price tag is like the right price for a game like this. I think it was like the Missing Air and the other one. I forget what the other original Famicom Detective game was called, but those you could get them bundled for like it was like $60 for both of them, which I think is probably a pretty good way to go forward. They're probably experimenting right now with the pricing structure, seeing if it works. I know these games are significantly more popular in Japan, obviously, than they are here in the US, which makes a lot of sense. But I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's like I'm getting a lot of really great, I'm getting a really great story with a good, decent length and like just really good quality, like character designs, animations, backgrounds, and stuff like that. I did want to shout out the company that worked with Nintendo on this. They're called Mages. They did pretty much all of it. I think that they, obviously under the tutelage of Sakamoto and stuff like this. And Sakamoto is pretty used to this at this point. He did the same thing with Mercury Steam, with the Metroid Dread and Samus Returns. So I think this is something that he likes to do quite a bit, is work with fresh new teams that like aren't necessarily a part of Nintendo. I know that they came to him originally with the pitch to remake the Famicom Detective Club games. So I'm glad that they're all working well together, and the artists they have on those teams are fantastic. And I think, just like the little bits of animation that the characters do is really good. I am wondering when the M rating is going to kick in on this fucking thing. You know what I mean? Because definitely in the first like few chapters, there's like a little bit of stuff, but it's nothing that really warrants the M rating yet. I mean, obviously it's a game about a serial killer, and I'm sure the further you get into the game, the more that's going to come into effect. But it is a pretty tame M for now. Yeah.
David, did you complete The Missing Heir?
I did not.
Okay.
No.
Well, yeah, to that point, there are some curse words. Obviously, that doesn't necessarily warrant an M rating, but it was kind of fascinating to see, like the first time that
I heard one shit, I believe.
Yeah,
so
that was the one I'm thinking of. And then some lesser curse words, but and then the stuff like Jordan was talking about with the like sexual flirtation and stuff like that a little bit.
Yeah.
Obviously, none of that necessarily requires M, but it's just kind of fascinating to see in a Nintendo game. And I have a feeling I know where we'll see the M rating based on playing the other games, and the moments that I think those games were not rated M, right? Or they definitely weren't. But I think I can see the moments where this one might head that way based on my playthrough of that one.
Yeah, and I have a feeling it's gonna come to a head. You know what I mean? Like the longer that you keep going. But yeah, it's fascinating.
Like not like you won't be like, oh, that whole thing was, it's just because of this one or two things. Yeah.
And I am fully expecting full frontal nudity from Emio by the end of this game. And if I don't get it, I'm going to be very disappointed.
I think we should talk about
reached that point yet.
I think we should talk about the animations and graphics you were just mentioning, because you're right. I think this game has, like, you think of a visual novel, and you often think of, a lot of visual novels are indie games, and they require a lot of artwork because, like, you want to have different poses for all your characters, you want to have different backgrounds, and that's intense, and that's a lot of stuff. But Nintendo, man, they really have like gone off with all their, there is a little cool animation in almost every scene, if not, and it's really satisfying. Like, and it adds a lot, and all the characters talk, and you see them talk, and they might move a little bit, and it feels really alive, despite the fact that it is, not super graphic. I don't know how to, it really feels very vibrant for that.
Like the comparison that I was thinking of, there's a game I played, Persona 4 Dancing, which is a rhythm game, but it also has a lot of visual novel elements to its storytelling. And that it's very static sprites, not even sort of lips moving. It's just dialogue coming across, a little bit of voice acting. And going to here, where like there's literally a scene with two schoolgirls, and there's one who's very talkative and one who's shy. And it's those subtle facial expressions on the shy girl that makes you go, oh, I need to talk to her. Mm-hmm. And it's like something where with the graphics alone, you're getting that storytelling. And I was really appreciative of moments like that throughout the game.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I think that the little bit of like, it's like motion comic style animation, like the company I work for, that used to be like our main thing that we did like back in the day. It was kind of, you're taking still images and you're sort of puppeting them a little bit. Right. And I think that it's a really effective way to get little subtle performances out of characters, or like just little bits like breathing or stuff like that, without having to draw new poses on everything. And the way that they do it is like so seamless. Like they just do a really, really good job with it to where it doesn't feel hokey, because it's hard to do without making it feel hokey, you know, but they do a good job of just instilling all these essentially still images with a ton of life and a lot of, like you said, little bits that you can then use for the gameplay or use to take information from. You know, it's like they made a whole brand new technology for LA Noire to like capture these little minuscule things. But really, if you're using things creatively and you're being smart about it, you can do it for pretty cheap.
Yeah, and on top of just the character designs and the animation of the characters, like the backgrounds and stuff are gorgeous, dude. And it makes me really like want to use the look feature just to see the full background, just to kind of see all the little details they decided to add in. And this game is just really pretty overall.
Mm-hmm.
Like the whole package feels really complete, which I was surprised by. And I just wasn't really expecting to be like, oh man, this is a fucking beautiful field right now, or this is a beautiful shot of me standing at a bus stop. Like, I don't know. It just really kind of like took me from surprise. Like I really like it. Yeah.
All of that, what we're saying is true of the remake too. Of the first games, but this one is just notched up. Like it is really hitting on all these fronts. David?
They talked about that in the Ask the Developer, that they wanted to place it in more settings that weren't just like back streets and office rooms and stuff like that. You're kind of stuck with that because that's where the original NES games took place or whatever, right? So they made the distinct choice to put scenes out in fields and in more rural areas and stuff like that. So it has a little bit more color and a little bit more life than the original games, which is really nice. And speaking on that too, it's like at any point you can press the B button and basically remove all the HUD and text boxes, which is a really nice feature because, you know, a lot of these paintings and character portraits are just gorgeous and they have details that are covered up by the text boxes often. So at any point, if you just want like a nice photo of what's happening in the game, you can press the B button. And I found that really nice. And then adding on to that too, something that I noticed is this game is a first party Nintendo game that has a volume slider. You can mix the SFX music and dialogue. I'm like, what the fuck, Nintendo? I need that for every single game. Why is it just the Famicom Detective Club games that get that? That's ridiculous. But either way, it's a very welcome feature. It's also nice because the music is fucking bopping in this game. I don't know if we want to move on to that, but I've been really enjoying the soundtrack.
Yeah, let's talk about the music and the sound design because we haven't really hit on the voiceover aspect yet too. Yeah, I think the music is nice. I haven't paid special attention to any one track or what have you, but it's very immersive. And then when the music changes, you know, in moments and like that sort of, or the sound effect they have for like an aha moment and stuff like that. I really like the sound effects for the Famicom Detective Club games, even though they're a little hokey, but they also kind of work. It's that same thing you're talking about. Like it could be hokey, but it's just enough of a like doodle-doo or whatever. Like, but can you talk about the music more, David, since you're a fan? Like which tracks are...
Oh, yeah. I just like a lot of the... Because you're in a dialogue with these characters for sometimes like 30 minutes at a time, you know? So the music is going to be looping that whole time, right? And has just this really pleasant vibe to it. And I don't know that it's always immersive necessarily because it's like pretty upbeat. It's like early 90s Japanese city pop, you know? And it's like, so it's very much of the era, but in a way to where it just kind of, I just found myself like fucking grooving, man. Like as I was playing so often. And then, you know, you go to like a nursing home or something and it's a lot different of a vibe, right? But it's, you know, for, I think a lot of the stuff that's in agencies or in the police stations or something like that, it's just this really great, like upbeat kind of like, I don't know. It's just, it reminds me of like a music from a different era, but with a kind of a modern spin. And I've been really enjoying that.
If there's nothing else on the music, let's talk about the fact that about the voiceover. So the voiceover, which might sound disappointing to some people, is all in Japanese, but it really works because it's set in Japan, right? And their lips move correctly, or, you know, maybe not like perfectly, but like close. Like it
pretty
works.
fucking well.
Yeah. Like
again, as someone who works in animation, I was very impressed.
Yeah, it's impressive. It feels very real, and the characters look Japanese, and I don't know, you know, like it just so I think this is true in the remakes too. It's all in Japanese, and then the text is in English, but it really works. I like to watch movies with subtitles anyway, usually. So like, where it makes sense. And I think it makes sense here. And David, you might even have a unique take on this as you've been trying to learn Japanese. Is this helping you?
Yeah, it is nice as I'm trying to kind of immerse myself in the Japanese language a little bit more leading up to my Japan trip to play this game. It's been pretty nice. But what about you, Dodo? What are your takes on this?
Yeah, I think it ultimately comes down to just sort of a really basic business decision. I think this is a game that's going to do gangbusters in Japan, and it will be happy for any sales it picks up in the US. And like, I'm fine with it. I think we've mentioned my love of the Yakuza games. The first 6, 7 of those were Japanese language only with subtitles. I got really used to playing subtitled games on that. So like, I didn't have any issues with it. And I think the performances are so solid, even in Japanese language, that I don't feel like I'm missing out on something by having an English dub. I think this is for the scope of the game. I think this is the perfect way to do it.
I also feel like an English voiceover might have ruined some of the performances from the Japanese voiceover. But yeah, it's like for the budgets, like then you have to need to redo all the mouths, like all that kind of stuff. It just makes sense, but it feels right. And anyone who in the US who would pick this game up probably does not mind reading in subtitles at all. Like this is the type of game that you can get away with that kind of thing as well.
Yeah. I mean, every novel is a visual novel because you're always looking at the words. But you ever think about that? But no, I mean, I feel like disrespectful when I skip through the performances. You know what I mean? Like, because there's a lot. I mean, like when I'm trying to just like go quickly, I'll just like jump through, but it's like the performances are good. And like you said, there's also like little subtleties to the way that they deliver lines, and you hear a lot of emotion in the characters' lines, and every single line is spoken. I don't know that there's any dialogue that is not spoken, even the main character. You can toggle that on or off if you want the main character to be voiced. But I think like having the main character have a voice is awesome. And I think it really goes a lot further into it. And something we didn't really talk about is there are sections of this game, I don't know if this was true in The Missing Heir, but where you play as Ayumi, who is your partner at the Utsugi Detective Agency. And it's like, so you've got little sections in this game where you're in her shoes and you're going and interviewing students while your main character protagonist, who you name in this game, who I named Nippon Yoshimura, which is the name I give to every character in a Japanese game where I play as a Japanese person. It'd be like if I named an American character America Davis. But it's just nice to have a little bit more variety there, and kind of have that character voiced as well and everything. It just works a lot for the credence of the story.
Yeah, it definitely also made me feel like, why don't we just play as her? Because she's a through character. And I was like, I was really excited when it switched that perspective, because I don't think it does in The Missing Heir, at least.
I don't think so.
You interact with her a lot, and do the reviews and stuff like that. But I was really pleased at that, and was like, man, I kind of wouldn't even mind a game where you just play as her. But
I kind of think we will see more Famicom Detective Club games, because I don't think they're super expensive to produce, and I think they do well enough in Japan. I mean, we'll obviously have to see how this one does, but I think a game where you're playing primarily as Ayumi is almost a lock, I think.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Well, I think that we've talked about a lot of things, but one big thing we haven't really hit on much is the overarching story. And I know some of us are still shorter than others, and we don't want to spoil anything necessarily. But I do think we can, the big part of the story is already kind of shown in all the trailers, right? That there is a serial killer who is using a smiling bag on the head, is sort of a calling card, or at least that's presumably what's happening. But it's also tied into a urban legend that somebody might show up with that smiling face on their head, and depending on what you do, might murder you or whatever. It's like this urban legend, and I think that that coming together in this game really works and kind of creates this creepy vibe. And I definitely, even this early on, I'm looking at all the characters being like, who could it be? Or who, because I think it's gonna be somebody we know, right? Like maybe I haven't met.
I've
them
already
yet.
got a couple ideas. I could see it going a couple of
prime
different ways.
suspect, yeah.
Yeah.
But is there anything? So I think it's working in terms of the mystery, and I think something, if I'm not repeating myself, is I really do feel a little bit like a detective. And something you said earlier, Jordan, about like to role play in the games, and something you said earlier, Michael, where you're like, I'm the detective. I'm like, I really do feel like both in the way the gameplay works and also just me sitting back here spinning my wheels, even though I don't think I can solve it early, right? It's not Clue where I can just be like,
that would be funny. You could just make a guess and it's like, cool, you don't need the story anymore. You bypassed the entire legal process, put the perp in jail.
Yeah, like,
now you're being sued.
Like you can't speed it up, but it is fun the mystery's working, at least from my perspective. Does anybody else have any thoughts on the story or the mystery part of it? Or
Yeah, the mystery is working for me. I'm definitely at a point now where more and more complications are getting added to that mystery. So I'm eager to see where that leads to. But like I said, this is a game I'm going to finish because I want to find out who did it. And I think that's just the ultimate sign of a good story. If at the end of every chapter, you're like, I want to see the next chapter.
Yeah.
Like that's the winning formula. So yeah, I'm excited. I have a prime suspect. I'll be disappointed if who I think in like chapter 3 is the killer turns out to be the killer. Like I'll feel like, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see who it turns out to be or whom.
Or whom. Is that a hint? I don't know what that means. Who or whom?
It's OEM.
Yeah, and then you do get to name yourself in this game, and I and you do in the other ones too. And I was so out of it, y'all. I thought it was a woman, so I named my character a female Japanese name. But I'm rolling with it.
What?
May
What?
is what I picked. Like
yeah,
that
is a girl's name.
Yeah, I felt like it had to be a Japanese name. Like when the name prompt came up, I was like, well, okay, I got to think of a real Japanese name, and it's not going to be like Shigeru Miyamoto, which
that's the only Japanese name you know.
That's like all sadly. I got. That's all I got.
Yeah.
But anyway.
That's funny. So just a single name?
No, I put a last name like Takahashi or something.
Okay, there we go. Very good.
My character is a 19-year-old boy detective Michael Domangue. Full name in there.
Michael Domangue.
That's beautiful. In the missing error, you could put 12 characters in your first name. So my first name was Professional, last name Asslicker.
Did you carry it over? Because it does ask if you want to carry over the saves from previously.
No, this one I started fresh, and it only gave me 10 character options. So Professional was out. So now I am Senior Asslicker. Which provides for some very hilarious dialogue options that I have been taking screenshots, and I will post in the Discord
Please do.
when this episode drops. I'm saving
That's great.
for that.
A lot of last name call outs in this game. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about this, Asslicker?
Oh, Asslicker, I didn't see you there.
But I sure felt you. Anyway.
I'm a
yeah. It's okay. No, it's good. That is something that I was surprised at in this game, is that it was like, we found Famicom Detective Club save data on your console. Do you want to carry over your character and everything like that? So it's like, little things, and there's little callbacks throughout the game to people that you've met in the previous games. You certainly don't need to have played those previous games in order to enjoy this at all. But if you have, there's little things. Like I said, it carries over your save data. And then also, obviously, the demo, once you finish chapter 3, it's straight up, it's like, thanks for playing the demo. Here's the eShop. And I was like, yeah, motherfucker, I'm going to get right in on it, because I was totally hooked by the end of chapter 3. But they did a really good job kind of having it all connect, and that save data will roll over and everything. So I love that Nintendo is kind of all in on that strategy with their demos these days.
It is a big demo, and if you're out there listening to this and you're like, you want to check it out, there's no reason not to try the demo. Yeah. And if you bounce off it, cool. And if you get way into it, because you can, and then you can decide, right? Like if you want more or not, like that's great.
Yeah, I was fully, and I'm just wearing my shit on my sleeve here. Like, I was fully anticipating playing the demo, learning enough about the game in order to talk about it intelligently on the podcast, and then bouncing off because this isn't my style of game. But I'm hooked. I'm like completely invested, and I have to know what happens. And I certainly don't want to just have it spoiled for me online. So I'll be playing through this game in its entirety for sure.
Similarly, even though I was like, I'll buy this game when we got close to recording, because I had San Japan, I was like, well, maybe I won't, because I won't have a lot of time and I'll probably just have enough time to finish the demo. But pretty early on, like 1 hour or less into it, I was like, okay, I love this. Like I'm already on board and sold. I'll play this whole thing through sooner than I thought. I even spent more time playing it than I thought I would over the weekend. So yeah, I don't know if that's a good place for us to start wrapping up here. If there's any other thoughts y'all have about this game that we didn't get a chance to talk about, anybody have anything they want to make sure and squeeze in?
Is this Nintendo's only visual novel franchise at this point in time?
I think so.
Yeah. That's pretty cool to see them kind of like branch out and try something new. I just really, and then the fact that it's so well done just makes sense. It's like, oh, what is Nintendo going to bring to the visual novel franchise? Oh, it's incredible writing, So really cool to see them kind of branch out into this style of game. And yeah, hopefully, like you're saying, this game doesn't seem very expensive to produce as compared to something like a Mario Odyssey or a Tears of the Kingdom. So hopefully they'll get enough sales to kind of keep doing this style of game in the future.
Totally, yeah. It kind of makes me want to play the the Famicom Disk System versions of these games too. Like, find a like English translation hack of those games, because it obviously this would work perfectly fine on an NES. I could see how this would work, and it might actually be easier. When you've got less information in the actual images to click what is obviously an important thing for you to click, you know what I mean? So it kind of makes me interested to see what the gameplay would be like in that kind of older style as well. I know they released these games like for the 3DS in Japan on the Virtual Console, and a lot of people could play them that way, but it's just really nice to see these games come forward. What was it last week? Summer was talking about Tokimeki Memorial. And so I hope that there are more games that get translations and remakes in this way. It's nice to see Mages working with Nintendo. Hopefully that kind of is the start of a nice relationship with them going forward for this series.
Well, I think that's going to do it then for our discussion on Emio the Smiling Man, Famicom Detective Club. If you're playing the game and you have anything we missed or you want to share with us, definitely drop a comment and we'll try to shout you out next time. And with that, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we'll talk about the games we've been playing recently. This week, I mostly played things at San Japan. I didn't really play anything other than Emio, unless it was Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, which I played a shit ton of at night, every night with Jordan and with Treeborg and Ben Neely, who were the other folks with me at the convention, or the four of us played a bunch of Smash as well. Jordan and I also played some Astro Duel too.
Oh yeah.
While we were there, I wrangled Jordan into playing some Street Fighter in the arcade against me. Sad to say, I needed somebody to beat up, I guess. But I think you actually beat me once, didn't you, Jordan?
Yeah, like once.
Yeah. Okay. I played some pinball because they had pinball machines this year. We played some Flash Gordon pinball, like I said, and then some Iron Maiden pinball, which was pretty fun, actually. What else? I played a lot of indie games because there are a lot of indie developers there. One called No Signal that I'm interested in. Another one called Inferno. These are all games that aren't out yet for the most part. A couple guys that I met last year and they came back this year are making an RTS. I think that this is out, called Terrestrial. I'm not a big RTS player, but I really like the guys that make it. There are more, but as they release and I get a chance to play them, then I can shout them out. But I played some random Japanese mech fighting game too that I don't even remember the name of that they had it. I played a lot of random stuff like that just to try it out that they had at this arcade. But that's mostly what I played this past week.
Yeah, been mostly playing Emio the Smiling Man. Been enjoying that quite a bit. Also, a lot more paper Picross. Take this opportunity to show off some of my Picross puzzles I've been completing here. Got some mittens there on the left and a hot cup of Joe. Got some beautiful little shoes there and a little duck. We got lots of stuff. I've been having a ton of fun playing this Picross book. Hey, look at that. That's a sloth. But anyway, I've been doing so much of that. So much so that I'm like, what am I doing with my life? Because it takes a while to do these because I'm a perfectionist. Anyway, moving on. I also failed to mention this up top, but I did secure tickets to the Nintendo Museum, or rather, my entry was drawn because it was a drawing system to see if you could get in. So me and I'm going with two other people. We both, all three of us put in 3 different entries each because that's the max that you could do. Neither of them got picked, but I got picked. So luckily, I can take all 3 of us with us whenever we go on the trip. So we will be going. But I've been playing a little game called trying to figure out why my credit card isn't working in order to actually buy the tickets. Sadly, today is Labor Day. I've been trying to get in touch with my bank in order to get this done, but they're making it very difficult for some reason. So this is a cry for help. Someone at Nintendo of Japan, I know you're listening right now. Please let me buy the tickets because I'm very excited to go and I'm going to buy a lot of merch at your store at the end, I promise. So please let me in. We'll see how it works.
Just make sure you don't accidentally throw the giant Wiimote at the giant screen and break it.
That's true. I'll put a giant wrist strap across my entire body in order to stop that from happening. But I'm very excited to go to that whenever we go. So that's been that game I've been playing. I've been playing a lot more Donkey Kong Country 2. I love that game so much. I was inspired by 10,000 Hertz, Cena, who has also been playing the game and just recently 102%ed it, which is very hard for that game. There's lots of hidden stuff throughout that whole game. And so I've actually never fully completed that game, and I think I'm actually going to go in and try to do it this time. I did find, you might see in the background of my background here, unless there's a video playing right now, I do have the Donkey Kong Country 2 Player's Guide from Nintendo Power, so I am not above going in and finding some of those really hard to find DK coins and using that guide to help me do that. And then lastly, I want to give a shout out to Super Mario Eclipse. That mod came out last week, and I finally got it installed on my Steam Deck, and I've been playing it a little bit starting last night, and I'm really enjoying it quite a bit. It's not really what I expected, and that's kind of on me. I didn't really follow it along with it exactly, but I thought this would just be like a full conversion, brand new game of Super Mario Sunshine, like a sequel to Super Mario Sunshine, and it's kind of that, but really what it is an expansion of Super Mario Sunshine. So it's got the whole base game still in there, right? So all the areas you can go to in Super Mario Sunshine are still there and still present and everything. But then on top of that, there's all this added stuff and added worlds and added stages, a lot of which happens after you beat the base game, right? So I went to stream it last night and I was like, what? This is just the regular game again. I was like really confused as to what was happening. Now, granted, there is an improved moveset. Something that I don't love about Sunshine is that it took away the long jump from Mario 64. That's added back in now. You've also got like a little flood boost jump that you can do. It's got like a butt slam jump that gets higher every time you do it. So there's all these like increased movement options, which is really great for this game, because I think that's one of kind of the things that is a sticking point with this, is that's not exactly like Mario 64, right? So it kind of is a nice middle ground between the two control schemes in a way that is working really well for me. But then, yeah, I have happened upon a couple of the new areas, and they're very, very fun to play in. There's a cool tutorial at the beginning that shows off a lot of the new stuff that you can do in the game. And something else I really enjoy about it is that, on Delfino Island, you can kind of see from the hub where all the areas are, like the levels in the game, like they're all literal tangible places on the map. And something cool that this game has done has made it to where you can walk between all the different stages essentially now. So it's like you kind of like, there's these new pathways that lead out of different areas in the game that lead you to these little hub areas that you walk through and then enter another stage through a different way. And so it's just this really cool form of kind of connecting Delfino Island and making it feel a little bit more organic. I don't know. I'm really enjoying this game quite a bit. I think it's going to have 240 stars altogether, or shine sprites rather, to collect, because they just kind of doubled the content of the game. But really, really, really cool mod. It's running great on my Steam Deck in high def and 60 frames per second. So I'm really pumped to keep playing this as the days go on.
Cool. Yeah, I have not had as much time, but then I realized like, oh yeah, I did play some cool game demos over at San Japan. But yeah, in the evenings, I would play Super Smash Brothers Ultimate with Patrick and some other friends, and that was fun. And yeah, Astro O'Toole, that was my first time playing. Incredible game.
It's really good.
So much fun. Oh my God. Like I was just not expecting to, I was like, oh, it's just a simple little thing. But it's like, no, you get really into it. There's a lot of variety in the stages. And then when you get out of your ship too, it's just as fun as being in your ship, which is really cool. But once the Balatro update came out, I was like, let me download this and see what's up. I didn't really read too much about it, but it is, from my understanding, a purely cosmetic update. So it took me a little while to find out in the options, like where to turn on these cosmetics. So every game that they're crossing over with corresponds with a particular suit. And then you can just get those as your suit options. But did get me there where I was like, okay, I had beaten it with every deck on the base level. And now I'm like, okay, maybe I'll start beating it with every deck at the next step up. So I got my first win with the next base difficulty level up. And, I've unlocked enough to where I kind of know what runs are going to be viable and what are not. So it's kind of nice there. And then, so over at San Japan, of course I played Monochrome Heights. I sat there and played probably, I think to like 3-1, 3-2, somewhere around there. I can't remember exactly where I dropped off, but a lot of polish. Patrick, you should be very proud. It's coming along very nicely. And then the other two I wanted to shout out that I played there that were both pretty, not exactly feature complete, but like we're pretty close to being done, was the first one was called this game called Bridgeborn. And it was a local dev from San Antonio. And I talked to him for a bit and he said he's been making this game for 9 years in Java. And I'm like, dude, that is wild. But the game kind of has like this art style. It's like a Diablo style game where it's like kind of isometric, but you can zoom in and zoom out in it's such a way that's just like really beautiful. And the graphics are kind of almost watercolor-esque. And that's what really drew me in. I was like, this game is really beautiful. Like you can tell a lot of love went into the art. And I was like, did you do all the art? And he goes, yeah. I'm like, so you did like everything? He's like, pretty much. I'm like, that's nuts. And so it's supposed to be like a fully featured RPG style game. And so there's a pretty hefty demo out that I was playing. And man, I was like, this is a game I will pick up when it comes out. But Bridgeborn, pretty cool stuff. And then the other one I really liked was Nimrod's Guncraft Survivor, which is very close to being released, if not already in early access. Has a pretty beefy demo on Steam, but it is, I hesitate to call it a Vampire Survivors like, because it is and it isn't. It's like similar in the sense that there's like, hordes constantly coming around you. You have like a buddy who's constantly shooting. So like in Vampire Survivors, you never shoot, but this one you actually have a gun that you shoot as well. It's auto aim, but then the upgrades are like stat upgrades versus in Vampire Survivors, you get all the item upgrades, but really fun, and the art style is really great. It's kind of like a sci-fi colonial shooter kind of guy, but I know there's like a bunch of different characters that you can unlock over time. But man, that game was really fun, very addicting in the same way as Vampire Survivors, and I can see myself playing this for just as many hours as Vampire Survivors. So I wanted to give that a quick shout out. But yeah, other than that, that's pretty much it. I didn't have much time besides that, and then the Emio. That's kind of took all my gaming time.
What about you, Dodo? What have you been playing recently?
So I want to first lead off by a retro game that I finally beat for the first time. I was at a barcade in Dallas this past week, and I beat the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade game for the first time with a broken jump button. All I had was attack, no jump. Fortunately, it was free play. If it wasn't, I'd probably be out like $20-$30 on that playthrough.
Yeah.
And then the other game I've been playing a lot is Ayuden Chronicles 100 Heroes. This was a game that came out a few months ago. I was a Kickstarter backer on it, full disclosure. And I was just waiting for a couple patches to drop for it before finally getting around to it. Really enjoyed it. It's from the creators of the Suikoden games. And I am trying to get the good ending, which means collecting every single hero. So that has been a long-term project for me, but really enjoying some of that throwback classic JRPG vibes. And then I've also been playing Star Wars Outlaws the last couple of days. I'm in agreement that the price of it is on the high end. So I actually just signed up for Ubisoft Plus because I figured I'll play it for as long as I want to play it. Ubisoft has been telling people you shouldn't believe in owning games anymore. So I'm taking them at their word. So I'm just going to play it as long as I play it and then cancel my subscription. But
good for you.
It's like the ultimate 7 out of 10 open world game. It's got a great style, great production values. And I mean, at this point, some really awful bugs going on. The biggest bug for me, as someone with an Xbox and PC, the cloud saves don't work. So there's no cross progression between the two platforms. And that's like a real big issue for me right now. I have to play it on PC. I can't play it on Xbox. But as a Star Wars nut, like this is really just a fun time at an open world for me. And I think I am full agreement that like when Black Friday sales come around for this game, that's the time that I think a lot of people should be jumping in, because you'll have patches, you'll have some DLC by that point. I think this is a perfect Black Friday pickup later on.
Yeah, I know. Sadly, I think a lot of the people that were the early adopters, because you could get this game early and pay extra for it to get it early, got fucked because there was a bug that they had to fix that then deleted everybody's progress, and you had to start the game over again early on. So it's like these kinds of games now, just by default, I like wait a couple weeks before really thinking about grabbing them, you know?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I had to do the classic thing of updating my video card drivers because I was having some real issues, and that turned out to fix most of them. But yeah, it came in hot, as a lot of triple or quadruple A games do these days. So, happy to give it a try, and happy to cancel my subscription when I'm done.
Awesome. Well, that's going to do it then for this episode on Emio, the Smiling Man, Famicom Detective Club. Thank you so much, Michael Domangue, for coming and joining us once more. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
Thanks to MilkyWay.co, who does our website. Thanks to Corduroy, who does our music. Thanks to all our patrons over on Patreon. If you're looking to find me, Patrick, on social media, you can find me most places as PDYX.
You can find me online at Boardan.
I'm pretty much everywhere on the internet at Monolith Fiji. And what about you, Michael? Where can people find you online?
You can find my dead Twitter account at mdomangue and my very alive Threads account also at mdomangue.
There you go. Make sure you shoot him a follow. I guess I got to make a Threads account one of these days. I don't know. We'll see what happens. If you'd like to find our show on social media, we are at Switch Headz on Twitter, at Super Switch Headz on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. We have a website, switchheadz.com, and we have a Facebook group, Discord, and a Patreon, as Patrick mentioned before. You'll find all those links in the description of this episode, whether you're watching it on YouTube or listening on Apple or Spotify. Please go and shoot us a subscribe, a like, a review over on Apple Podcasts. All that stuff helps us get noticed. And please join us over on the Discord. It's such a wonderful community. We'd love to have you in there and discuss not only the show as we move forward through these episodes, but also just everything gaming as well. A wonderful non-toxic community we'd love for you to be a part of. That's going to do it for this episode. What a great time. We're going to be back next week with another banger. So don't go anywhere. Or, I mean, you can, but not in a week's time. You better be right here again, right when it comes out. You can listen at your own pace. I don't give a fuck. In the meantime, gang, you know the drill. Be safe out there. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to one another. Why don't you visualize some fucking novels for once in your life? We love you very much. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.